Hi guys, I hope all of you are doing well. So I welcome you all to yet another video in this AWS Data Engineering Certification course, and in this particular video we are going to see how we can create a Postgres database instance on our RDS and how we will be using it using a EC2 instance that we will launch in a public subnet, and we will use that particular EC2 instance as a proxy. So in the previous few videos, we have already talked about many other database engine, like we have talked about Microsoft SQL Server, we have talked about we have talked about MySQL, we have talked about Oracle DB, and we have talked about MariaDB. So if you haven't watched those videos, I would recommend you guys to at least watch this video in a full length so that you guys are aware about how we can launch the database instances on a Linux operating system, as well as I would highly recommend you guys to watch the Microsoft SQL Server video where we launched the database instance on a Windows operating system. So with that said, let's get started with this video and let's get straight into the system. So as already discussed, that today we will be creating and connecting a Postgres database instance. So this tutorial creates an EC2 instance and an RDS for Postgres database instance. The tutorial shows you how to access the database instance from the EC2 instance using a standard PostgreSQL client. As a best practice, this tutorial creates a private database instance in a VPC, that is Virtual Private Cloud. In most cases, other resources in the same VPC, such as EC2 instance, can access the database instance, but the resources outside of the VPC cannot access it. After you complete the tutorial, there is a public and private subnet in each availability zone in your VPC. In one availability zone, the EC2 instance is in the public subnet and the database instance is in the private subnet. Okay. So what this particular thing means, or what these lines are basically informing us and telling us, right? So if I talk about, okay, launching Postgres RDS instance. Okay, so this is what we will be doing in this video. Okay, so what does this particular thing means, right? So as we are already aware about the fact that we have something called as a region, right? And in AWS, right, region is the topmost thing, or I would say in the hierarchy, it is the topmost element in our architecture, right? Inside regions, we have multiple availability zones. Okay, so here inside this region, I will be choosing the availability zone. So I may not choose the availability zone. Right, I can either choose it if I want. If I want some, I would say some service to be launched in a specific availability zone, I can do that also. Else, I can leave it to AWS to choose the availability zone, right? So this one is the region, okay, and the inner one is the availability zone. Availability zone, okay. Now in this single availability zone, what we will do is we will try to create our own VPC that is called as a virtual private cloud. And why we'll be creating this VPC, you guys will understand in a bit. Okay, so we will create our own VPC. Okay, now this VPC can also extend to multiple availability zones. So let's suppose if we have done a multi availability zone deployment, this VPC can extend to a multiple availability zone also. So let me do one thing. Let me change it here and make it here. Okay, so even though if you are having multiple availability zone, those availability zones can be in the same VPC. Cool. Now what we will do is we will launch first of all an EC2 instance. Okay, we will launch an EC2 instance, and this EC2 instance will be inside a public subnet. Okay. It will be inside a public subnet. Now, what is this public subnet? What is the private subnet? Don't worry, I will be discussing each and everything. Okay. It will be inside a public subnet, and then we will launch our RDS instance, right? So let me use the database icon. Okay. And my RDS instance will be inside a private subnet. So this will be inside a private subnet. Okay. Cool. Okay. So till now, moving forward, we will learn multiple things again, right? This is not pretty much it, right? Moving forward, I will also be letting you about how we will be securing our public subnet and private subnet. But moving forward, when as we do things along, then we will try to discuss it. Okay. So after you complete the tutorial, there is a public subnet, private subnet availability zone in your VPC. In one availability zone, the EC2 instance is in the public subnet and the database instance is in the private subnet. Important, there is no charge for creating an AWS account. However, by completing this tutorial, you might incur costs of the AWS resources you use. Okay, you can delete these resources after you complete the tutorial if they are no longer needed. Okay, so if we want to create an AWS account, right, if we want an account to be created from our side, there is no charge for creating an AWS account. Okay, we will be charged for using the services of AWS, right? And for this particular tutorial, whatever services we will be using, so if it is a newly created account, so your free tier will be available, right? So we will be creating each and everything so that you can utilize the free tier provided by the AWS, and you will not be even charged a single penny if you have, let me make this again very clear, if you have your free tier account available with you. If not, you will be charged very less, just a few rupees, I would say, right? 15, 20, 50 rupees, that's it. You will be not charged more than that for this particular video. But I would highly recommend you guys to create a new AWS account if you don't have, right? So that you can utilize the free tier provided by AWS, and it's nothing unethical, I would say, right? AWS provides free tier to everyone to learn the things, right? Once you have learned the things and you are utilizing it for maybe your organization or maybe for your own startup or anything else, then for sure they are going to charge you. Okay. So the following diagram shows the configuration when the tutorial is complete. So this is how our end diagram will look like. So don't worry, this diagram is nearly equal to the diagram itself, but moving forward, when we will try to see what is this internet gateway and these security groups and all those stuff, so I will let you know. So this tutorial allows you to create your resource by using one of the following methods. Firstly, we can use the AWS management console, right? Using which we will create an AWS account. So we will use the first method itself, where first of all, we will create an EC2 instance, and then we will create our Postgres database instance. Then we will use CloudFormation to create the database instance and the EC2 instance. So this is optional, right? So if we are going ahead with the CloudFormation thing, in that case, we will get some template from the AWS itself, using which we can launch our VPC, we can launch our EC2, and we can launch our PostgreSQL with the help of a YAML file or with the help of a JSON file. Okay, so CloudFormation is a service that uses infrastructure as a code, that we will be defining each and everything in a form of code, right? Not exactly a code, I would say, but it will be a form of a configuration file, where either I can use a .yaml file extension or I can use the .json file extension. Okay, so I will be mentioning all the configurations of each and every service that I need to use, right? And with just a single click of a button, I will be able to launch all the services, or I would say different services, just by using one single click of a button. So in this video, we will not be covering the CloudFormation part of it. We will only be covering the management console, AWS management console aspect of it. Okay. So the first method uses easy create to create a private PostgreSQL database instance with AWS Management Console. Here you specify only the database engine type, the database instance type, and the database instance identifier. Easy create uses the default settings for the other configuration options, right? So when we will try to create our RDS instance, so RDS has two options. First of all, there is an easy create option, and then there is something called a standard create or full configuration option. Okay, so ultimately the underlying instance that will be launched will be pretty much similar itself, because here most of the settings will have in easy create, most of the settings have default values configured to it. But in the standard create, we will have an option to change these default settings to the required setting that we want. So when you have a standard create instead you can specify more configuration options. When you create a DB instance, these options include settings for availability, security, backup, and maintenance. So all these settings will be predefined or will be by default defined in the easy create configuration. So to create a public database instance, you must use a standard create. For more information, you can go on to this particular link. So don't worry, I will be showing you both of the ways how we can create a Postgres database instance with an easy create template, as well as I will also be showing you how we can create it using a standard create, and how we can also do a multi-availability zone deployment inside the standard create or the full configuration mode. So we have just till now learned practically how we can do, like we can do a different kind of deployments, right? We can do a single availability zone deployment, or we can do a multi availability zone deployment. So in this video I will also be showing you guys that how we can do that multi availability zone deployment. Now topics, these are the topics that we will cover. So prerequisites, then we will create an EC2 instance, then we will create a PostgreSQL database instance. Okay, so we are not using the CloudFormation thing, so we will skip it. Then we will connect to a Postgres database instance. Then we will delete our EC2 and the database instance, because we are not using the Lambda function and CloudFormation, so we will not be covering these things. Now comes the prerequisite part. So before you log in, complete the steps in the following section. Okay. So before we begin, right? So obviously, if we want to create any resources, if we want to launch any service on the AWS console, right, or I would say on AWS cloud, right, we need some kind of account, right? For accessing any of the platform in this world, we need to create an account over it, right? If we need to access Instagram, we need to create an account. If we need to access WhatsApp, we need to create an account first. So the same thing here is there. Right, if you want to access the AWS cloud platform, you will have to create an account. Okay, signing up on the AWS is pretty much similar to signing up on any other platform that you have done till now. You will have to enter your email, you will have to enter your phone number, right? You will have to enter some kind of OTP that you will receive on your email, and that's it. Your sign up will be done. Okay. Now, once you have signed up on your AWS account, the account that you have created will be called as a root account. Okay, that account is, in the technical terms, or I would say in the terms of AWS, it's called as a root account, or you can say it as a main account, right? It's recommended by AWS people. It's not mandatory that you have to create an administrative account, but it's recommended, right? So what AWS developers suggest, or AWS people suggest, that we should not use our root account on a daily basis or for our day-to-day tasks, right? Where we have to launch some service, where we have to visualize our dashboard and all those things. For that, we should create a user from our root account, and based on the kind of activity that we will be doing from that account, we will be providing some kind of I would say some kind of access to those accounts. Okay, so what AWS suggests is, from the root account that we will have, we should have some kind of I can say a sub account, right? So if this is my main account, okay, if this is my main account, I should have some kind of subsidiary account. Okay, I should have some kind of subsidiary account on this particular main account, right? Okay, so here we can create an account, something called as, let's suppose, admin account. Okay, some admin account. Either I can, so for my case, I have created my account with the name of Vishal. Okay, and I have given the admin access to this particular account. Okay, so this is my admin account, means I will be able to access all the services, I will be able to view all the services, I will be able to create all the services, but I will not be using the root account on a daily basis. I will be using this particular account for doing these tasks. Even for recording these videos, I use the this admin account of mine itself. Okay, so this is what it's recommended. It's not mandatory. Again, I would be saying it's recommended. Now we have to create an EC2 instance. Okay, so let me come here and let me log into my console. Okay, so here you can see, right, that I have created an account, right? You can see the account name is Vishal, right? This is the account ID, right? This is account ID, account name is this, and all these stuffs, right? So I am not using my root account. I am using a, I would say, a sub account created from my root account. Cool. So now let's launch an EC2 instance. So I will come here on the console and I will search here for EC2. Okay. There are multiple ways by which we can launch an EC2 instance. Either we can just search here as EC2 and we can click on this button and EC2 instance will be launched. Okay. So this is the EC2 instance will not be launched. We will be redirected to the dashboard page, I would say. Okay. And then again, if I am on my console, right, and I can just click on this three line, right, and here in the all services thing, in the compute category, you will be able to see EC2, right? So from here also you can launch EC2, and this is the place where we can get the list of all the services that are there, okay, on the AWS cloud. And these services are, I would say, divided into multiple categories. So if I talk about compute category, so there are these many resources or these many services that we can use for compute purpose. If I talk about container, so these are the services that I can use for container. If I talk about storage, these are the services that I can use for storage. If I talk about databases, so there are these many databases that are available on the AWS service. Similarly, migration and transfer, right, networking and content delivery, developer tools, customer enablement, blockchain, satellite, analytics, machine learning, media services, right, management and governance, quantum technologies, security, identity and compliance, cloud financial management, front end and mobile development, application integration, right, business applications, end user computing and IoT, and even game development, right? So these are the categories, right? All in all, I believe most of the domains of the IT are getting covered here, right from any kind of compute resource you require, you can get here. These DevOps thing, containerization part and all those stuffs you can do here, right? Storing some kind of large volume of data, you can use the storages. Any kind of structured, unstructured data, you can do it. Any kind of migration, you can do it. If you have some kind of networking role, all these stuffs, you can use these services, right? These are the things majorly for I would say DevOps part, as well as more of a automation kind of stuffs, right? So all these things can be done here, right? Customer enablement, even you can provide your customer support and all these things. Blockchain is covered, satellite part is covered, analytics part is covered. You can have these many services, right? Machine learning, you can see, right? These are the services that we can use for machine learning. Media services are there, management and governance, telecom, healthcare, and all those stuff. So I believe all the services that are there, right, most of the aspects are covered with these services. Okay. So here, if we click on this EC2 instance, right, again, we will be redirected to the EC2 dashboard. Okay. or else I can just also click on this particular link and I will be redirected to the same page. Now in the upper right corner of the AWS management console, choose the AWS region in which you want to create the EC2 instance. So here if I come, right, so currently I am in the North Virginia region of the United States. If I want to switch to any other region of the world, I will just click on this drop down and I will switch to any other region. So currently I am in India, right, and Mumbai is the region which is nearest to me, and I am very much aware about the fact that I am just launching these services for the learning purpose, right, or maybe for a demo purpose, I would say, so that I can show you guys to you that how we will be doing the stuffs, right. So I will try to launch these services as near to me. Okay, if you are developing a product, if you are creating a product, right, in that particular case, for the reason you are targeting or the region where your I would say the most chunk of the customers will be there, you should launch the instance, or I would say you should launch your services nearer to that particular location. Let's suppose, even though I have developed uh, my application maybe, or my web app, right, or any kind of platform, right, in India, I'm also right now in India, but I'm aware about the fact that the users of the platform will be mostly from maybe USA, maybe Canada, right. In that particular case, I will not be deploying my platform on Mumbai region. I will be deploying my platform on the USA region. I may deploy it in the North Virginia region. I may deploy it in the uh, whatever other regions are there, right, in USA, Ohio region, or maybe North California region, maybe Oregon region, and whatnot, right. So depending on where the highest chunk of my users will be there, I will try to deploy it as near to them so that the latency time and the data transfer time is less. Okay, let's suppose I have deployed it in the Mumbai region, right, and someone from, let's suppose, California is trying to fetch something. So he will have to request all the way from California to Mumbai, and the response will have to travel from all the way to Mumbai to California, right. So obviously, even though these things are being done in a fraction of seconds, but why to even create that much, I would say, that much friction, right? Why to create that much friction when I have the capability, right? And this is what the magic of cloud computing is, right? All in all, if I talk about the benefits of cloud computing, this is what the benefit and the magic of cloud computing is, that if I want my system to be launched in North Virginia, I can launch it in North Virginia sitting here in India. If I want it to be launched in London, I can do it sitting here in India. I can launch my resources and my services in the London location, right? And this is what the cloud computing is all about. Okay, so I will try to launch my system, or I would say my services in the Mumbai region. Then what we will do, we will choose EC2 dashboard and then choose launch instance in the following page, right? So this is how our thing will look like, right? So here I can click on view dashboard, right? So now you can see this is what we are looking at. Okay, and here I will be selecting what? I will select this launch instance button and I will click on this launch instance. Cool. So you can see now this page has been open, and here in the launch instance, so the launch instance page opens. Choose the following settings on the launch an instance page. So under the name and tags, enter the name EC2 database connect. Okay, so I will just copy this name. I will come here to the page and I will paste it here. Okay. Now under the application and OS images, that is Amazon machine image, choose Amazon Linux and choose the Amazon Linux 2023 AMI. Keep the default selections for the other choices. Okay. So here in the applications and images, I will try to select Amazon Linux, which is a by default thing, right? So this is the by default operating system. So these things, if you see here if you see here carefully, so you will be able to see these are nothing but the operating systems, right? Mac OS is the Mac operating system. If you want to use any version, specific version of Mac OS, that is also possible. So Mac Sequoia and Mac Sonoma, right? These are the two versions that are available. If you talk about Ubuntu, right? So Ubuntu, whatever version you want to use, you can use that version 24.04 LTS, 22.04, right? Ubuntu Server Pro, and all these versions are deep learning, AMI, Neuron, right? GPU, TensorFlow, PyTorch, and all these versions are available already. Talking about Windows, okay? So certain, yeah, confirm changes, okay? So talking about the Windows, so you can see these are the number of versions that are available for Windows. Okay. Similarly goes with the Red Hat operating system, right? So Red Hat is again one of the distributions of Linux itself, right? So Red Hat Linux, you can see. So Red Hat Enterprise Linux 10, Enterprise Linux 10 with high availability, version 9, and Red Hat EL 8 with SQL Server 22 standard AMI on, and all these stuffs, right? So currently we will go ahead with Linux operating system itself. Okay, Amazon Linux, right? Where in the AMI again we have multiple options, and we will have to choose this Amazon Linux 2023 AMI. Okay, so we will be choosing it, and under the instance type choose T2 micro. So let's scroll down here. So by default it's T3 micro. So either you can choose T2 micro or you can choose T3 micro if you are having a free tier account, right? If your account is eligible for the free tier thing, right? So you will get both of the instances, that is T2 micro and T3 micro for free. So you will be eligible for the free tier of it. So you can, it's recommended to go ahead with T3 micro because it is of the newer generation. Okay, so you can choose, instead of this T2 micro, you can choose T3 micro also, it hardly matters. Now under the key pair login, choose a key pair name, uh, key pair name to use a existing key pair. To create a new key pair for the Amazon EC2 instance, choose create new key pair and then use the create key pair window to create it. Okay, now in this key pair login thing, right, if you have already created an EC2 instance earlier, then you must have created a key pair. So you can just click on this drop down and you can select your key pair, whatever you had created earlier. So my key pair name is Vishal Singh 17 key pair or VS17 key pair. Okay, so this is the name of my key pair that I have created earlier. If you are creating the EC2 instance for the very first time, you can click on this create new key pair. Okay, you can name your key pair anything. Maybe you can give your name, right? Or maybe you can say as Postgres RDS key pair. Okay, key pair, something like this, whatever name you want to give. Okay, it hardly matters what name you are giving. Okay, so you can give, let's suppose, this name. Keep the key pair type as RSA itself, and the file format of key pair should be .pem. Okay, if you are already aware about putty, right, and if you are aware about how we can do an SSH connection using putty, right, and you are you will use that particular tool to connect to the EC2 instance, then you can use .ppk ppk extension. Else let the by default extension be .pem itself, and just click on create key pair and it will download it into your local system. Okay, that's it. Because I have already created it, so I'm not going to create a new key pair. I will be using my older key pair itself. Okay, now comes the allow SSH traffic in network settings, and again I would say this is one of the most important things that we should understand here. Okay, again from the security point of view and the privacy point of view. So for allow SSH traffic in network settings, choose the source of SSH connection to the EC2 instance. You can choose my IP. Okay. So if you choose my IP, in the displayed IP address is correct for the SSH connection. Otherwise, you can determine the IP address to use to connect to the EC2 instance in your VPC using secure cell connection, that is SSH. To determine your public IP address in a different browser window or tab, you can use the service at this particular thing. For an example, the IP address will look something like this. In many cases, you might connect through the IP addresses from behind your firewall without a static IP address. If so, make sure to determine the range of the IP addresses to use by the client computers. Cool. Now, reading this, I hope you guys have like not understood in depth. Now, if I come back here, right? If I come back here and if I show you guys in this network settings thing, okay, so we have a few options, right? Here we have options of allow the SSH traffic from, okay, so from where do we have from where do we want our SSH traffic to be allowed, okay. So if I'm selecting anywhere, okay, if I'm selecting anywhere, that is 0.0.0.0/0, it means anyone in this world having the endpoint. What is the endpoint and what is IP address, I will let you know in a while, and you will automatically understand in a while when we will continue along with the video. Just understand for now that maybe an endpoint is something like if you want to access Euron, right? So how do we access Euron? Euron.ai, right? That is the domain name, right? That is the domain name of Euron, right? But usually it's Euron.1, right? So that is the domain name of the Euron, but ultimately we are trying to connect to some kind of machine itself, right? We have launched our like our own infrastructure is on AWS itself. Euron's own infrastructure is on AWS itself, right? So we have EC2 instances and EC2 machines running at some part of the world, right, where you are connecting to it, okay. So if you allow SSH traffic from anywhere, right, anyone having the IP address of this particular machine, so as we are already aware about the fact that IP address will look something like this, right. So let's say this is the IP address that my machine EC2 instance is having, okay. So this is the IP address of my EC2 instance, okay. Now I am a user. So let's suppose I am the user, okay, and let me create a few more users here, okay. Now, if there is no kind of I would say security thing is added here, right, and currently I am allowing what I'm allowing traffic from anywhere, okay. So currently it is something like 0.0.0.0/0. It means anyone who is having this particular IP address will be able to connect to this particular machine. So even if this user is having the IP address, he will be able to connect to the machine, okay. Even this user, right, he will be able to connect to the machine very easily. This user will also be able to connect to the machine very easily. All these connections will be done in a very easy way, okay. Now let me tell you one more thing is why we are launching an EC2 instance and why we are not directly launching our RDS instance, okay. So this is the this is Postgres, okay. This is my Postgres RDS instance, right? So why I have not directly launched my Postgres RDS instance and I am connecting it to the internet? It is to make my database secure. Okay, it is to make my database secure. So because I have launched it in a private subnet, no one directly from the internet will be able to connect to my database instance. He will have to go through some kind of interface, some kind of application, some kind of app server to connect to my database. Now only this kind of connectivity is enabled. means from EC2. Okay, color. Okay, so from, not this color, I want this color to be changed. Okay, so from EC2. Okay, from EC2, a communication with PostgreSQL RDS instances available, and from RDS instance to the EC2 is also available. So me as a user, I will not be able to directly connect to this particular thing. If I want to connect from here to here directly, this connection is not available. I will not be able to directly connect to my RDS instance. I will have to connect to my EC2 instance. So this is my EC2 instance. Okay. And using the EC2 instance itself, I will be able to connect to my RDS. Now there will be some kind of security group that will be added to this particular RDS instance, and some kind of security group that will be added to the EC2 instance. So I can do EC2 hyphen RDSX here, and this security group will be added to the EC2 instance. Okay. Now what will happen is we will have to install some kind of Postgres client on this EC2 instance also in order to interact with the PostgreSQL. So I will be installing some kind of Postgres client, right? Using which I will be able to interact. Let me write Postgres itself. Okay, so instead of this, let me do Postgres. Okay, so I will be able to interact to my Postgres SQL. So I hope now you guys are getting the clear picture of what we are trying to achieve, right? Now if it is 0.0.0, right, here, then anyway anyone in the world having this particular IP address will be able to access my EC2 instance, right? So if anyone is able to access my EC2 instance, they will be able to get a kind of communication with my database instance also, right? Now to make everything more secure, what I will do is I will try to here select some, either I will try to select some kind of custom IP range that I can give, or I will try to select my IP in this case. Okay, so this is my IP address currently, right? So let's suppose here this is me. Okay, so this user is Vishal. Okay, and the IP address of Vishal is what? It's 103.48. Okay, so I can say the IP address is 103.48 dot 197.89 slash 32 dot 197.89 dot 197.89 slash 32. Okay, so this is the IP address of Vishal, or I can say this is the IP address of my system. Okay, now I have allowed only my IP to get an SSH connection to this particular instance, right? Now let's say this is maybe a user 2. Okay, so for sure user 2 is going to have a different IP address than mine, right? So maybe the IP address of user 2 is something as, let's suppose here it is 47. Okay, let's say this is user 3. Okay, let's say this is user 3, and the IP address of user 3 is, let's say this is 198 or 199, whatever, right? So this is the IP address of user 3. Now once I have selected only my IP, what EC2 instance will do, that it will add this particular value here. So this is usually called as an IP table. Okay, this is usually called as an IP table, which is maintained by EC2. So let me create it something like this. So let's suppose this is my IP table. IP table. Okay. right? And these two are connected to each other, right? EC2 will be able to access this particular IP table. Now EC2 will do what? It will check. Let's suppose if I want to now, so this is it, right? Now if I want to connect to my EC2 instance, it will do what? Okay, it will do what? It will, if I delete it, right? If I am making an SSH connection request to my EC2, right, it will first of all check the IP address of the machine, right? It will check, right? So this is the request I'm making, right? Suppose this is the SSH request I'm making to my EC2 instance, right? It will check the IP address of my machine, that from which machine this request is coming. It will try to match that particular machine's IP address in the IP table. If this particular IP table gets matched, or sorry, if the IP address of the machine gets matched in the IP table, it will allow the traffic from that particular machine, right? So this traffic will be allowed. Now let's suppose user 2 is trying to, okay, user 2 is trying to do a SSH request on our EC2 machine. Now the IP address of user 2 is 103.47.197.89/32, right? This IP address is not mentioned in my IP table. So EC2 will do what? It will block the request of this particular user. Similarly, if my user 3 will try to access the EC2 instance, again, my EC2 instance will check the IP table, right? If this particular IP address is present in the IP table or not, right? If it is not present, it will block the request of the user 3 also. Now let's suppose I change my IP table, right? And I try to add this IP address to the IP table also. Now user 3 will again have to make this SSH request, and the EC2 instance will do what? It will try to check in the IP table. Now there is a match of the IP address in the IP table also. So my EC2 will now allow user 3 to get connected to my EC2 instance. Okay, and this is exactly what we try to do here in this network setting part. That we try to let the EC2 instance know that from whom you should get connected and whose IP addresses you should be blocking. Okay, so here currently I will be choosing my IP address, that because I am aware about the fact that no one else apart from me will be using this particular EC2 instance, right? So I can choose as my IP address. Maybe if you're working in an organization, if you're working in some kind of company, in that particular case, you may have to create an EC2 instance where multiple people may have to access the instance. In that particular case, what you can do, you can either choose the custom IP addresses, right? Or else you can create a security group, right? If you go here in the custom, okay, so you can create some kind of security group, and you can mention the list of the IP addresses, or I would say the range of the IP addresses in the custom security group. Okay, so in that case, it will allow that range of IP address to be connected via some kind of SSH client to this particular EC2 instance. Cool. So this is what I wanted to explain you guys in a detail. So again, you can see here warning. So if you use 0.0.0 for SSH access, you make it possible for all the IP addresses to access your public EC2 instance using SSH. This approach is acceptable for a short term in a test environment, but it's unsafe for the production environment. In production, authorize only a specific IP address or range of IP addresses to access your EC2 instance using SSH. So the following image shows an example of the network settings section, right? So this is how the network settings section will look like. Here also they have selected my IP, and we will try to go ahead with my IP itself. Leave the default value of the remaining sections. Review the summary of the EC2 instance configuration in the summary pane, and when you are ready, choose launch instance. Okay. So rest of the things we will keep it as by default. Here we can view the summary, that what all things are we doing. So the number of instances that we'll try to create is 1, right? this is the software AMI that we are trying to use, that is Amazon Linux 2023. Type of instance type is T3 micro. Firewall is this, and 8 GB is the volume storage that we are having in this particular instance. Now I can click on this launch instance, or else I can also click on this preview code, right? So we have already learned about the fact that we can connect to the machines via multiple things, right? We can either do using console, we can do using CLI, we can do using some kind of SDK, right, and whatnot. So if we want to connect create same configuration of EC2 instance via a CLI, so this is the code, or these are the commands that we can run on AWS CLI to do the thing. If we want it to be done using a Python SDK, so using these using this code, we can create a similar kind of EC2 instance via a Python SDK also. So let's close this and we will try to launch an EC2 instance via our console itself. So here you can see we are successfully able to launch the EC2 instance in a fraction of seconds, right? We were able to successfully launch our EC2 instance. So here you can very clearly see the name of our EC2 instance is EC2 Database Connect. This is our instance ID, right? This is the a unique identifier for our instance. Our instance state is now in the running thing. Instance type is T3 micro. Status check is initialized. Alarm. So alarm is something, let's suppose if we want to create any kind of maybe a notification maybe that we get, right? Some kind of I would say uh, when something triggers, I would say, right? Let's suppose there is a condition that my RAM uses goes beyond 80%, right? In that particular case, I can set up an alarm that if my RAM uses goes above 80%, you send me an email. Okay, so those kind of alarms can be set via this alarm status. Okay. Now availability zone. So you can see AP South 1 is the availability zone in which the EC2 instance has been deployed. Now this is the endpoint, right? So this is the endpoint that I was talking about. Okay. So this is public IPv4 DNS, right? And this is the endpoint using which we will also try to connect to our EC2 instance moving forward. This is the public IP4 IP address. We don't have any kind of elastic IP. We don't have any kind of IPv6. Monitoring is disabled. Security group name is launch wizard 11. Key pair name is VS17 key pair. Okay, so we can have the key pair name. Then we have the launch time, platform, right? If managed, and the operator, right? Then if you want to get further more details, we can get it from here. That is the instance ID, the IP address, the host type, right? Public IP v4 address, private IP v4 address, public DNS, instance state, right? Host name type, private IP DNS, auto assigned IP address, VPC ID, right? Compute, instance ARN, then the instance details will be given here, right? Then we can have the status and alarm thing. If we want any kind of matrices, if we want to see, check, we can check these matrices here. Alarm, we can set those alarms here if we want. Monitoring part, right? Again, as I was talking about the CPU utilization part. Okay. Network part, and what is the network in, network out, network packets in, network packets out, metadata tokens, CPU credit users, CPU credit balance, and all those stuffs. Talking about the security part, right? So IAM role, owner ID, launch time, security groups, and everything will be attached here. From here itself, you will be able to choose the inbound and outbound rules. So you can just click on this particular security group, right? And you can click over it. Okay, and you can edit the inbound and outbound rules. So let's suppose inbound rules, you can select here, right? Custom TCP and all those stuffs. You can enter what kind of IP range you want to enter, and all these stuffs you can do. Okay. So this is about security. Networking part again, VPC ID, subnet ID, availability zone, IPv4 address, private IPv4 address, domain names and DNSs and all these stuffs are given here. Then we have the storages and the tags. Okay. So these are the details that we can get for our EC2 instance, right? So we have successfully launched our EC2 instance. Now on the launch status page, note the identifier of the EC2 instance, for example, this. So this is the identifier or the instance ID that we will require when we will try to connect it to the RDS instance. Okay. Now choose the EC2 instance identifier to the open and list the EC2 instances and then select the EC2 instance. In the details tab, note the following values which you will need to connect using the SSH. So the instance summary, note IPv4 DNS and the key pair name. So we are already aware about the fact. So this is our IPv4 DNS, right? And here also we can get the public DNS thing. And the key pair name is VS17 key pair, right? Now wait until the instance state of the EC2 instance has a status of running before continuing. So here you can see that the instance state is in the running state, right? So we can move forward. Now we will create a PostgreSQL database instance. So the basic building block of the RDS is a database instance. This environment is where you run your Postgres database. In this example, you use EasyCreate to create a database instance running the Postgres database engine in a DB T3 micro database instance class. So to create a PostgreSQL database instance with EasyCreate, sign into the AWS management console and open Amazon RDS console at this particular link. So let's open the RDS console. Okay. So similar kind of dashboard for just like we had the dashboard of EC2, similar kind of dashboard we have for our RDS, right? Now we can go here in the, first of all, we should make sure, okay, let me go ahead with the documentation itself. In the upper right corner of the Amazon RDS console, choose the AWS region in which you want to create the database instance. So as I already told you that moving forward, before moving forward, we should always check that we are launching our RDS instance in the same region in which we have launched our EC2 instance. Again, it's not mandatory to launch in the same region, but if we will try to launch it in a different region, in that particular case, if we are trying to do any kind of data transfer between our RDS and our EC2 instance, in that case, we will be charged some amount on both of the services, that is on the EC2 service also and on the RDS service also, right? If both of the services are in the same availability zone and in the same region, in that particular case, we will not get charged for the data transfer part. Okay. So if we are not having a system that is that should be on like maybe you can say that is used in the worldwide region, in that particular case, we can keep our EC2 instance and our RDS instance in the same region. So that we can save some money on top of it. Okay. So I will try to choose Mumbai here itself. Now in the navigation pane, choose databases. So I will click here and I have chosen databases. Okay. Now choose create a database and make sure the easy create icon is chosen. Okay. So here you can click on create a database. And here we have to first of all choose easy create. Now in configuration, choose PostgreSQL. Okay, so in configuration, I will try to choose PostgreSQL. Okay, so for DB instance size, choose free tier. Free tier appears for the free plan accounts. Sandbox appears for the paid plan accounts. So here, because currently my free tier has been over, right? Free tier of this particular account is over. So I can see here sandbox, right? If you will be having a free tier account, then here instead of sandbox, you will be able to see something like this, that is a free tier thing. Okay. So here in sandbox, we will have the instance size as DB T4G micro. We will have 2 cores of CPUs, 1 GB of RAM, 20 gigs of storage, and we will be charged $0.025 US hourly. Okay. So, okay, DB instance plan, sandbox appears, it's fine. Now for the database instance identifier, enter database test one. So let me just copy this particular link. Sorry, copy this particular value and paste it here. Okay. Then the master username, enter the name of the master user or keep the default name, that is Postgres. So let it be by default, right? Let the master username be Postgres itself. Even though if you want to change your master name, if you want to keep your name, any other name, you can do that particular thing also. Okay. Now the create database page should look similar in the following image. For the free plan accounts, free tier appear, and for the paid plan, sandbox appears, right? So this is exactly what we are getting. We have chosen our PostgreSQL. DB instance size wise, I have chosen sandbox. If you have the free tier account, you will get the free tier written there. And we have given other DB instance identifier as DB test 1. Now to use an automatically generated master password of the database instance, choose auto generate a password. To enter generate the master password, make sure auto generate a password is cleared and then enter the same password in the master password and confirm password. So I will come here and I will enter the password. So let's suppose I'm entering password as root, and in confirm password also I will enter root and root. Okay. Now to set up the connection with the EC2 instance you created previously, open setup EC2 connection, select the EC2 compute resource and choose the EC2 instance created previously, right? So we will just click on this particular drop down. Here by default it's chosen don't connect to the EC2 compute resource, but I have to connect to the EC2 compute resource. So I will check this, and in this drop down I will get all the list of EC2 instances that I have, because currently I have only one EC2 instance. So I have that list and I will attach that particular instance to my RDS instance. Here you can very clearly see that some VPC settings can't be changed when a compute resource is added, right? Adding an EC2 instance resource automatically selects the VPC, database subnet group and the public access settings of this particular database. To allow EC2 instance to access the database, a VPC resource group as RDS EC2X, this is exactly what I was talking about here, right, will be attached to the EC2. Where did it go? Sorry, here itself, right? X will be added to the database and another called EC2 RDS X to the EC2 instance. You can remove the new security group of the database only by removing the compute resource. Okay, so because we don't want to remove the EC2 instance, so all the things right from the VPC till the database subnet group and the public access settings of the database will be automatically handled by the AWS themselves. Okay, you created previously. Now open view default settings for easy create. Okay, so I will click on this, right, and here I will be able to see for what all configurations, what are the default settings or default values of that particular configuration is. Okay, so if you talk about the encryption, so by default the encryption is enabled. If you talk about VPC, this is the VPC that has been added. Options group, so this is the default Postgres 17, right? And if these configuration values are editable after the database has been created or not, it is what is given here, right? So encryption and VPC we cannot change after the database has been created. Option group also we will not be able to change in this particular case. Rest of the things talking about the multi-availability zone deployment, subnet group, automated backup is enabled. A VPC security group is this and it can be changed. Okay, publicly accessible is no, later on it can be changed. Database port is 5432 by default. It can also be changed later on once the database instance has been deployed. Database instance identifier is database test 1, version is 17.6. It can also be changed moving forward. Database parameter group is this, it can be changed. Monitoring type is this, that is the standard monitoring type, again it can be changed. Performance inside is enabled and it can be changed. Monitoring is enabled, it can be changed. Maintenance is auto minor version upgrade, it's enabled, it's yes, and delete protection is not enabled and yes. Okay. So you can examine the default settings used in the easy create. The editable after the database created column shows which options you can change after the database, after you create the database. If a setting has no in that column and you want a different setting, you can use a standard create to create the database instance. If a setting has yes in that column and you want a different settings, you can either use a standard create to create a database instance or modify the database instance after you create to the change setting. Okay. So if let's suppose any of these values I want to change, right? So I will not be able to change using the easy create option. In that case, I will have to go ahead with the full configuration option, which I will show you guys later on. Okay. Now choose create database. Okay. So I will just click on this create database. Okay, so here you can see, right, when the status is available, you can connect to the database instance. Depending on the class and amount of storage, it can take up to 20 minutes before the instance is available, right? So we'll have to wait until this status get changed to available, right? So again, it will take a few minutes of time. So what you can do is you can directly skip to that particular point or that particular time where I have again started to explain about the databases. So in that case, the status will change to the available part. Till then, let's wait till the status of the database gets changed to available. Alright guys, so here we can see now that our EC2 connection has been set up, right? Successfully set up a connection between the database and the EC2 instance has been done. Whereas we have also successfully created our database, and now the status of our database is now in the available state. Okay. So now what I can do is, so I can skip this optional part. Okay. And I will directly jump onto this connect our Postgres database instance. So you can connect to a database instance using a pgAdmin or pgSQL. Okay, this example shows how to connect a Postgres database instance using the pgAdmin command line client. So as I already told you that we will have to install some kind of client on the EC2 instance in order to connect it via the client to the uh, RDS instance. So here we will have to do what? To connect to the Postgres SQL database instance using pgSQL. Find the endpoint or the DNS name and the port number of the database instance. First of all, we will have to sign in to the AWS console and go to the RDS thing. Okay. So in the upper right corner, choose the AWS region of the AWS instance, choose databases, choose the admin name here, right? And here if I select, so you will be able to see in this connectivity and security part, you will be able to see the endpoint, right? And the port number using which we will try to connect to our RDS instance. Okay, and this is what exactly I was talking about here, that even though if I'm having the endpoint, okay, so let me make it something like this. Okay, even though if I'm having the endpoint of my RDS instance, right, I will not be able to directly connect to the RDS instance. You will see just now the same thing. Databases on the connectivity and security tab, copy the endpoint, also note the port number. You will need both the endpoint and the port number to connect to the database instance. Now connect to the EC2 instance that you created earlier by following the steps. Okay. So first of all, we will connect to the EC2 instance that you created earlier by following the steps in the connect your EC2 instance in the Amazon user guide. We recommend that you connect to your EC2 instance using SSH. If the SSH client utility is installed on Windows, Linux or Mac, you can connect to the instance using the following command format. Okay. So for connecting to the EC2 instance using SSH, right, we will have to install a tool called as MOBA Extreme. Okay, so you can search for MOBA Extreme for Windows, right? So this is what the tool's name is, MOBA Extreme. Okay, and you can search for it. You can come on to this particular link and you can download this home edition one. This is the free edition, right? And you can download it. Once it is downloaded onto your local system, you have to just do next, just like we install any other software, right? You will be able to install it, and once you have installed MOBA Extreme onto your local system, you can search for MOBA Extreme and you can open the application. Okay. Now once you have opened the application, you will have to change the directory, or maybe you can also enter the location of your PEM file that we downloaded when we created our EC2 instance, right? We all remember that when we created the EC2 instance, right? And in the key pair thing, we either selected the PEM file which we have already onto our local system, or we downloaded that particular PEM file somewhere. It will go maybe to your downloads or maybe on your desktop, depending on your default configuration, I would say. Okay, so I can use this particular command to connect to my EC2 instance, right? So here, if I do clear, okay, and if I do ls, so you will be able to see that my PEM file is on the desktop itself, right? And it is present on my desktop. I can also verify the same thing. Okay, and I can show you guys here, right, that I have the PEM file available here on my desktop. Okay, so let me open this and let me open my MOBA Extreme now, right? Now I will be requiring this particular command to connect to my EC2 instance. So I will do what? SSH -i Okay, PEM file name is vs17 hyphen keypair.pem. Okay, and then ec2 user at the rate ec2 instance DNS name. Okay, so ec2 hyphen user at the rate, and then where will I find my ec2 DNS name? This is where public DNS. I will copy it and I will paste it here. Okay, and just I will press enter, right? And you can see I have logged into my ec2 instance. You can see here ec2 user at the rate, and this is the IP address of my ec2 machine, right? For example, assume that ec2 database hyphen connect keypair.pem is stored in dir on Linux this, and the public DNS name is this. So this is how the command will look like. ec2 ssh hyphen I, right? Directory name, your PEM file name, make sure to include this .pem extension, right? Then ec2 user at the rate your ec2 users public DNS name. Then get the latest bug fix and security updates by updating the software on your ec2 instance. To do this, run the following command, that is sudo dnf update -y. So I will just copy this particular command, come back here and paste it. So it will take just a few seconds to run. Okay, so you can see here it as complete. Now to install the Postgres command line client from the PostgreSQL on Amazon Linux disk, run the following command. So we have to run sudo dnf install PostgreSQL 15. Okay, so I will again copy this particular thing and paste it here in the terminal. And I will click, I will write Y and I will press enter. And now you can see the Postgres client has been successfully installed on my local system. Now connect to the Postgres database instance. For example, enter the following command at the command prompt on the client computer. This action lets you connect to the Postgres database instance using pgSQL client. Substitute the database instance endpoint, that is DNS name, for endpoint, and substitute the database name for the that you want to connect to the Postgres. The substitute master username you used for Postgres provide this particular thing, right? So pg SQL hyphen host, I will enter the endpoint, database name Postgres, and username is fine. So let me do this. Let me copy it and paste it here. And instead of the endpoint, I will provide the endpoint of my RDS instance. Okay, so instead of this endpoint, I will paste it here. Okay, port is fine, database is fine, and username is also fine. So I can just copy it from here, right? Go back to my mobile stream. I have pasted it twice. Remove all of it. Okay. Done, and I will press enter. Now I will have to enter the password. So I will write root and enter. So now you can see, right? You can clearly sorry guys. Okay, you can see here that we have successfully connected to the Postgres database instance, and now we are inside our Postgres RDS client, right? We are now able to establish a connection between our EC2 instance and our RDS client RDS instance using this particular Postgres client. Okay, so thing, right? We are able to do it. For more information on connecting to the PostgreSQL database instance, you can see onto this particular link. If you cannot connect to the database instance, see troubleshooting connections to your RDS, right? So we have already successfully created, right? This is somewhat we are trying, like we are seeing on our terminal also, right? So we have successfully achieved the connection. Now run SQL commands. For example, the following SQL command shows the current date and time. So I will just copy this particular command, come back here and paste it. And if I press enter, so I am shown the current date and time of the machine, of the instance, right? It means that I have successfully able to create to the Postgres instance, right? And we are able to see the current date and time of the Postgres. Okay. Now let's suppose if I want to list all the databases that are present in our Postgres database, right? So I will do what? I will try to write the query as select dat name from pg underscore database. Okay. So now you can see we have total four databases that are available. That is template 0, template 1, PG like PostgreSQL, and uh, we have our RDS admin also. Okay. Now let's suppose if I want to use any kind of database, right, in this particular thing, so I can do what? I will be writing as \c. Okay. So I will do here as \c. Let's suppose I want to do template 0. Okay. So password for user 0, it is root I believe. Okay. So okay, I could not create. So let me create a new database. Okay. Let me create a new database. So let's suppose create a database in Postgres. Right. So I will do same thing, create database. Let's say my database. Okay. And I press enter. So database is created. Now if I try to select, it's fine. My database is done. Now I will do what? \c. Okay. My underscore database. So now you can see from Postgres, the database has been changed to my database, right? Now let's suppose create a students table. Ten dummy records, let's say. Okay, so I will create a student table, something like this, let's suppose, right? Create table student. So I will have a student ID, right, which is of type integer, and it will be my primary key. Then I will have the student name, which is of varchar 50. It should be not null. Age is integer, course is varchar, and marks is int. Okay, so table has been successfully created. Now I will try to add some dummy data into my table. Okay, so these are the students whom I have, right? And now if I try to do select star from a student, okay, so you can see now we are able to ingest the data, right? We are able to fetch the data and do any kind of query that we want to do. Let's suppose if I want to do some kind of group by operations and all, I can also do it, right? Let's suppose select star from a student. Okay, let's say group by maybe course. Okay, and here I can do what? Instead of star, let's say average of marks I want to get. Okay, from student, and I want to group by course. Okay, and maybe I can also select course here. Okay, So now you can see for the course MBA, average marks is this. For course BTech, average marks is this. BCA is this. MBA is this, and BCom is this, right? So I'm just showing you some basic queries that we usually do, right? And we are able to fire all the queries that are available in the SQL. Now, if I go back here in my database instance, right, and if I go to monitoring thing, right, you will be able to see some kind of graphs here, right? We are able to see the burst balance, our checkpoint lag, okay, CPU credit balance, CPU credit uses, surplus credit balance, CPU utilization, database connections, right? DB load CPU, non CPU DB load, and all these stuffs we are able to see. Means our CPU is getting utilized, our database is getting basically utilized in this particular case. Okay, we will also be able to see the logs and events, right? That database instance was created, monitoring interval changed to 60 seconds, performance insights enabled, backing the database instance, and finishing instance of the database. Okay, error logs, Postgres logs, and all these things will also be here for us to visualize. Okay, so this is how basically we will be able to connect, right? I hope I am clear with this part, that we are able to connect to our Postgres RDS instance, and we are able to fire our SQL queries whatever is required. Now if I show you guys one more thing, okay, let me try to connect without EC2 instance. Okay, so if I do exit, and if I do exit here also, now I am on my desktop. Okay, and now if I try to connect, okay, to my EC2 instance, okay, so this was the command, right? This was the command that we utilized to connect to our Postgres instance, right? I hope you all of you guys remember here, right? If I show you, okay, so this is the command that we ran inside our EC2 instance to connect to our Postgres RDS instance, right? I'm running the same command here, but currently I'm not into my RDS, currently I'm not connected to my EC2 instance. I am from running this particular thing from my local setup, right? And I want to hit this particular endpoint of my RDS. So let's see if I'm able to do or not. Okay, so you can clearly see here that it's taking a long time because it's doing multiple retries, right? It's trying to do some kind of retry. And now you can see here that the connection has been failed, right? PSQL error connection to the server at this particular endpoint, right? Port number this, connection timeout, and is the server running on the host and accepting TCP IP connections? Yes, it is accepting. If you want to verify the same thing, right? Now if I SSH to my EC2 client, right, now I'm inside my EC2. You can very clearly see I'm inside my EC2. And now if I want to connect, sorry, not this. Okay, now if I want to connect to my PostgreSQL, it's done multiple times again. Okay, and now if I want to connect, root, okay, so I am able to connect to my Postgres instance via my EC2 instance only. I am not able to connect from any other system or any other, you can say, IP address. So this is exactly what I was talking about, okay, here in this particular diagram, that the only connection that is possible is, first of all, I should get connected to my EC2 instance, and then only I will be able to connect to my Postgres RDS instance. Else I cannot directly connect to my Postgres RDS instance even from my laptop, even though I have created it from my system itself, right? From this particular IP address itself. Then also I will not be able to directly connect to this particular EC2 instance on the endpoint of this EC2 instance which I am having. Cool. Okay. Now, sorry guys. Okay. Now I want you guys to understand one more thing, right? The full configuration of the Postgres SQL. Okay. Now here, if I don't choose the easy create, and if I choose the full configuration mode, and if I choose the PostgreSQL thing, right? So here I will be able to choose from multiple engine versions, right? I did not had any kind of option to choose the engine version in case of easy create, right? So I can choose from n number of options that are available to me for choosing the engine version, right? So let's choose the latest version. Okay. Here you will be able to see some kind of templates: production template, dev and test environment template, and the sandbox template. Okay. So here, if I am choosing the sandbox, right? So here I will be getting a single availability zone database instance deployment. If I'm choosing maybe dev test, right, or production, so I will be getting a multi availability zone deployment for 2 instances and also for 3 instances. So let's go ahead with the 3 instance deployment. Here it will do what? It creates a primary database instance with 2 readable standbys in a separate availability zone. This setup provides 99.97% of uptime redundancy across multiple availability zones, increased read capacity, and reduced write latency. Okay, so you can clearly see in the diagram, right, that we will have a primary instance which will have and which will be deployed in one availability zone, maybe availability zone 1, which will be read and write operation both. In other two availability zones, availability zone 2 and availability zone 3, right, we will have the standby instances which will only be read only instances. Okay. Now in the settings, right, let's suppose I'm doing naming it as uh, multi AZ. Okay. Data Postgres. That's it. Multi availability zone Postgres. Okay. Here I will be able to choose the master name. So let it be Postgres itself. Let me go to self managed, and let's suppose I choose same thing as root. Okay. And here I will confirm password as root. Okay. Here I can choose the kind of authentication that I should have for the database authentication option. So either password authentication or password and IAM database authentication I can also choose. Then I can choose from instance class, right? So what kind of database instance do I need? So standard classes include M classes, memory optimized classes, the R classes, and uh, compute optimized classes is the C class. Okay. So let's go ahead with the standard class itself. And here in the standard class, we will have multiple options that we will be able to choose from, right? We have the 12XL, the 16XL also, 24XL also. I believe 24XL is the largest one, right? Which will have 96 core of CPUs, 384 GB of RAM, and here you can see internal storage is 3.5 TB. Okay, and the EBS bandwidth, right, the elastic block storage bandwidth is 19,000 Mbps, that is 19 Gbps. Okay, so this is how large instances we can create, but I believe we should go ahead with the smallest one itself. So let's go ahead with uh, M5D large, right, which is having 2 CPU, 8 GB of RAM, because I just want to show you the multi availability zone deployment and the different options that are available inside the full configuration mode. Okay. Now talking about the storages, so we have already learned this particular thing, right? That we have multiple types of storages for our RDS. So we have general purpose SSD, we have provisioned IOPS, right? And we have the newer version of provisioned IOPS, that is IO2. Okay, so I can choose IO2. Okay, so I can choose between 100 GB to 65,500 GB, and provisioned IOPS, right? I can choose the volume between 1000 and 80,000. Okay. Now talking about the connectivity, right? So let's connect it, or let's not connect it to any kind of EC2 instance. Okay. And here I will make it publicly accessible. Okay. So here in publicly accessible, I am choosing yes. Okay. choose existing VPC or maybe any default. Okay, so you can keep it as a default itself, all these things, right? Database insights. Okay, so it's keeping advanced, so let it be. I can add Postgres and upgrade log. I can enable the monitoring of all the instances in the cluster. Okay, additional configuration wise, right, is this. Now you can see the estimated total monthly cost. Okay, so for database instances, I will be charged around $600 on a monthly basis. For storage, I will be charged 157 USD. Provisioned IOPS, I will be charged 945 US dollars. So total my costing will be around 1702 USD. Okay, so if I just do the mathematics, or if I just do the conversion part, right? So you can see around 1.5 lakhs of rupees I will have to spend on a monthly basis for an infrastructure like this. And this is not even a very large infrastructure. This is a very minimal infrastructure if I'm talking about for the production level thing. If I just increase something here, right? Let's suppose I have uh, maybe 40 TB of storage, okay? And I'm choosing something as, let's say, this 8XL. Okay, so here it should be between in the ratio of 0.5. So RDS operation minimum IOPS. Provisioned IOPS and IOPS is this. Okay, so let's keep it. Let's suppose so provisioned IOPS value must be 10,000 IOPS to 80,000 IOPS, right? The IOPS GB ratio must be between this and this. Okay, so if I decrease this and so 8.5 to 1000, it means I can keep it as, let's suppose, 1000, and 0.5 means it should be 8000 around. Okay, something like this, right? And now if I come here and check, okay, so you can see the monthly cost has been changed to 13,000 US dollars. Okay, and now if I come here and check, okay, so just see here, guys, it is near about 12 lakh rupees on a monthly basis, right? So just you can think about it, right? How much these organizations are spending on the infrastructure cost. So obviously, I will not be using these things, right? Let me again go back and change to a smaller version of cluster, even though I have to use it for a few seconds only and show you guys. But again, why to use things unnecessarily? So where did it go? Instance. Okay, instance. I'll be going ahead with M5 this, and here I can choose as, let's suppose, 100 itself. Okay, and maybe 1000. Let it be. Okay, so now I guess it is 500 954. Okay, and then I will just click on this create database. So again, it will start creating the database, that but the cluster that it will be creating this time will look something different. Okay, so it will start creating the database. Okay, so here you can see the status is now in the modifying, and one of the instances, okay, one of the reader instances now you can see of the cluster is now available. And here in the region and availability zone, you will very clearly see that our cluster is in AP South 1 region, right? And the instances are in all in the different availability zone. So our writer, one of the writer instance, or you can say our main instance, all right, primary DB, I would say, is in the AP South 1A availability zone. The other two are in the reader instances are in AP South 1C and AP South 1B availability zone. Right, this is the instance size and all the stuff. So again, I guess it will hardly take more 1 or 2 minutes to get it created. Okay, so the third instance is now also available, and the whole cluster still is in some kind of you can say some kind of configuration is still going on. And as soon as it's available, we will have our multi availability zone PostgreSQL deployment ready for us to be used. Just creating the backup is taking some long time. Status is still in the backup. Once it will be available, then only we will be able to connect to it. So let it be available. Not very sure why. Okay. So now you can see that the database is available, right? So this is our whole cluster. If you will click here, so this is the single database that we have deployed for the EC2 connection one, right? and this is our whole cluster of database. Right here in the role you can also see multi availability zone database cluster. Right, engine wise it's Postgres itself, upgradable. Right, it's second availability zone. Recommendation is one of the recommendation is given here. Okay, so enable IAM authentication and all these stuffs. Okay, it's again recommended, and all these informations are given here. Now if I want to connect to this particular database, I will have to do what? Let me open my, let's suppose, Windows PowerShell, or maybe I can also do it using the mobile stream. Let me open another tab here. Okay, and here if I write something as, let's suppose, PSQL hyphen version. Okay, so for sure I should have the PostgreSQL client installed on my local system now in order to connect to my RDS instance, right? And here now if I will click on this thing, okay, so here you will see we have the endpoints of our RDS. Okay, so these are the endpoint. So this is the endpoint of the writer and this is the endpoint of the reader. So let's check the end or let me connect to the endpoint of the writer instances so that we can also do the read and write operation both in this particular case, right? And in order to connect to this particular endpoint, what I will have to do is I can come back to my mobile stream and I can write as PSQL -h, and here I will be pasting the endpoint of it. Okay,